crowd like this before.
That's very cool. So, okay.
That's very cool, yeah.
Why did you choose Shanghai over Beijing?
Okay, what led Gary to choose Shanghai over Beijing?
So, my wife and I have a deal, and it happened when we left Japan, and it was that we always moved to a city where neither of us had lived before. So we went from Tokyo to Silicon Valley, because I'd never lived in California, neither of us had lived in California. And then when we chose Shanghai, it couldn't be Hong Kong, which is where Yuka was from. And Beijing feels heavy. You know, it wasn't, the pollution wasn't the apocalyptic level that it is today. But there was just the feeling that it's just not that fun or livable a city. And so we chose Shanghai. But again, remember, we chose it thinking we were there for 6 months. So if we'd been there for, and the biggest thing, our kids got lucky. If we had known we'd been there for 12 years, we would have forced them to go to a local Chinese school. They would have hated us with a passion for 2 years. Their Chinese would be gone, but our relationship may never have recovered with our kids.
Okay, well, one more question before we carry on with...
Gary, it was very interesting, and thank you, Becca, for sponsoring this event. What do you see as I'm a founder of an AI startup, and I anticipate that one of our major presences will be in Shanghai or Beijing. What do you see as a major challenge to a US-based startup launching in China?
Access to the data. So the problem you're going to have as an AI company is the Chinese government does not want foreign firms to have access to the data you need to build a big platform. And so the world is going to split. The Chinese data now, the data sets are so large, in fact they're larger in many cases than the US data sets, and so the Chinese firms will have a real advantage. If you're a company that has enterprise clients and it's something that the Chinese would view as sensitive related to the information, the odds of you being able to participate freely in selling into enterprise software solutions in China is very, very low.
So unless we do a strategic partnership with the Chinese,
I think it would be very tough.
Okay.
I think it'll be very tough.
Thank you very much.
All right. So Gary, you said you're have a knack at pattern recognition and foreseeing the future, right? So what do you foresee for your crystal ball look at China's tech future, tech innovation future?
So in 2005, we worked with McKinsey, and they did some nice work for Qiming, before Qiming was Qiming. And part of the work that they did was how many sectors, we picked 14 areas in technology, and which areas can you find a company in China that's either number 1 or number 2 in its field? In 2005, 0. In the 14 areas we picked. So there was no Chinese company that was either number 1 or number 2 in those areas. Today, the same study in 2016, there are 9 where the China company is number 1 or number 2. And the other 7, it's in the top 5. So when you look at that kind of change, what that is a tribute to the entrepreneurs of China. Because in the past, they didn't have the money. Well, you now have enough money. You didn't have enough of a market. Well, you now have enough of a market. And the Chinese consumers are very interesting. In 2000, in my earlier experience in China, you heard all the stories about lousy quality products, etc. I heard the same things when I was growing up about made in Japan, too. And the made in China change has occurred very rapidly. And so the underlying technology of what was just good enough, or a product that was just good enough for Chinese consumers in 2005, was not good enough for the global market. It was something everyone in this room would generally turn their nose up at. That is not true today. That is one of the fiercest, most demanding groups of consumers on the planet. So what that's done is it's forced the entrepreneurs to raise their game. And that can be in a technology product, it can be in a consumer product. If you look at the Starbucks roastery that was just launched in China, the quality of that construction rivals anything anywhere in the world. And 2 of the board members, I actually had lunch with one of them today, they were telling Howard Schultz that he was nuts, that the Chinese would never be able to make a building that would be at the quality level of the other Starbucks roasteries. And they all ate crow last week because that building absolutely is.
And drank coffee.
And so this is, Good point. And so that actually, those kind of evolutions in tech, that's a trend that's not going to stop. And so the big issue is you have to start to think about where does Chinese technology go after China? Because it may not come to the United States. We have very different models. So the Amazon model is very different than the Alibaba model. A PlayStation model is very different than the free play multiplayer gaming model. Tencent is 95%. 95% of Tencent's revenue comes from transactions. 95% of Facebook's revenue comes from ads. These are dramatically different business models. So I don't worry so much about what Alibaba is going to do in the United States. What you have to think about is in other developing markets, or other markets where the model's not set, who's going to win? Which model? The model that's coming out of the US, the model that's coming out of China, which model is better for those emerging markets? That, I think, is an area that doesn't get nearly enough attention.
Yeah, that's interesting on the business model point. On the particular types of technology innovation that are happening now, AI, big data, cloud, so many other areas that are VR, AR, that are coming up. Are there any of those that you feel that China has a real edge and could leap ahead globally in?
Well, all the folks who are, everyone's talking about data being the new gold. I think that's, I've seen that, I think 9 or 10 people are now trying to claim credit for being the first person to say that. So let's assume they're right. Which country in the world has more data? Okay, so they have more gold. So, you know, if it's a race to wealth and if it's a race to assets, their underlying base is going to be phenomenal. And now, part of the reason that they have so much data is they have a lot of people. But in the past, those people didn't matter because they weren't using technology products. They weren't really participating in, quote, what we would consider modern society. That is clearly not the case today. And so, whether we see this now, we study this very carefully in healthcare because we participated early in the migration of China being 2.5% of GDP in healthcare, which was 2004, to now about 6.2, going to, we think it'll normalize around 12, which will be a multi-trillion-dollar healthcare market in about the next 10 years. But it started from a very, very low base. Great example of what's going on with, you know, all the AI that's being applied against tumors. So quite interesting. In the US, the challenge is the HIPAA regulations. So all the restrictions in terms of sharing patient data. And so doctors often can't even talk to another patient about what one patient's protocol is because that's restricted. China doesn't have that restriction. So they go out and they scan literally hundreds of thousands of tumors very, very quickly with very, very little restriction. So the AI systems that they have for tumor identification, false positives, false negatives, etc., is better. It's just better because it's going to happen faster. And I think you're going to see that, again, China's strength is not its size. China's strength is its ability to deal with ambiguity. The entrepreneurs there are growing up in an environment where the rules aren't clear, the rules change all the time, you're not sure which ones are enforced. And so when you learn to navigate that, you develop a series of senses that allow you to be very, very nimble. And I think that's an incredible asset for those entrepreneurs. And so I think that, I think it's a very powerful force. And so I don't see anything that's going to slow down in the sectors we pay attention to the ongoing development of.
Right.
Now, they
so
also,
what do you think about the curbs on Bitcoin, though, in China?
they curb their own, they don't let people take their own currency out of the country. Why would they, I mean, you're naive to think that the Chinese government, if you think the Chinese government say, oh, you know what, great idea. Let's take a currency we don't control and let our people have unmitigated access to it so they can, what planet are you living on? I mean, that's not going to happen, right? Now, Bitcoin, however, they didn't actually, they're not stopping blockchain.
Right.
So you have to separate Bitcoin from blockchain. Bitcoin is the first popular instantiation. Blockchain will be with us the rest of our lives. It will be, I think, incredibly profound. What you have to worry about with the Chinese on blockchain is it gives you that ability to track literally everything in perpetuity and create records. I think the government may wind up using blockchain in a way that an American citizen would not be terribly excited.